Hey, hop, welcome to the Figure Forecast. Hello everybody and welcome to episode 9 of the Figure Forecast, the penultimate episode before Wrestlemania. As ever, my name is Sam Gardner and I'm joined by my co-host Damien Cross. How are you, Damien?
I'm pretty good this week. It's been an interesting few days. Obviously, we've been discussing your punishment, ready for the Easter weekend, and we had some interesting wrestling to discuss. Put it nicely.
Interesting is a kind word to use to describe this week's Monday Night Raw.
Monday Night Raw.
Because this week's Monday Night Raw was so putrid, we've decided not to go through every segment and just kind of have a general discussion about it. So I've kind of hinted my thoughts on Raw. What did you think about Raw this week?
Probably the worst episode of Raw, at least since we've started doing this, and one of the worst in recent memory for me. There was very little I enjoyed from this week, and most of what I did falls into the so bad it's good category rather than actually being good.
And I'd say that takes something for you to be that down on Raw, because generally you're more positive on WWE as a whole than I am. I'm a bit more cynical. So for you to be that down, it really has to take some garbage that they're serving to you to make you feel that way.
Yeah, for 90% of the show, most of the creative decisions they made were the wrong decisions. It didn't feel like a show that's in the build to WrestleMania.
No, definitely not. And the worrying thing is, if rumours to be believed, they recorded next week's Raw before the live episode that went out this week. So, God help us if that's true. But I think what we should start off with is something that really annoyed me and started Monday Night Raw this week. And it was the implosion, as WWE have put it on their website, of the Hurt Business. One of the highlights kind of on Raw for me. They had potential. I'm not saying they're the best stable in the world because they feuded with bloody Lucha House Party and Retribution. It's not like Evolution or something like that, but there was sort of a beacon there with them. They were presented quite well, all in suits, clean cut, and they all had an aura about them. And they've decided to split them up before WrestleMania for what seems to be a payoff of Baron Corbin joining forces with Bobby Lashley. It really annoyed me, and it's left me with the taste and the sense of what was the point? What was the point of this? Or what was your thoughts on this?
Looking at them together as kind of one segment, kind of the beginning and end of the show, it's not a good kind of segment. It made no sense to split the Hurt Business up. In fact, when I was watching it, I thought, okay, they're sowing the kind of seeds of doubt for the Hurt Business, and you kind of normally drag that kind of story out for a number of weeks, and then they just went, nope, now they're gone, we've split them up, which that's just not good storytelling. Like, if you want to have this kind of implosion, you drag it out a little bit, so you can actually build a story out of it. At the minute, they got 2 matches. We saw one of them this week. We've got one next week where Cedric Alexander and Shelton Benjamin are going to be facing off against Bobby Lashley. And that's kind of presumably the fallout, because the story is then going to progress with this Baron Corbin stuff. So kind of what was the point in kind of giving away your entire story with no payoff? I didn't mind so much the Baron Corbin being revealed at the end as kind of like Bobby Lashley's. There's not actually any shown connection. He just answered his kind of bounty that Bobby Lashley put on Drew McIntyre, came out to attack him to end the show. And I kind of, independently from the rest of what's going on, I liked that because there is this story of those 3 used to be a team. So it kind of made sense from a story kind of place that Baron Corbin to kind of get involved in this kind of bounty bit. But there was no need for any of this bounty thing. It should have just been the Hurt Business against, like, stacking the odds against Drew McIntyre into WrestleMania. It did lead to some funny moments, that kind of thing backstage with Drew kind of squaring up to everyone and being like, "Are you going to be the one that tries it?" and like absolutely ruined Angel Garza. But it just didn't need to happen, and I feel like they had this idea of what they wanted the show to end at and went, right, how do we get there in one episode? And they just made a lot of bad choices.
I get that, and it sort of feeds into this weird thing that they've done with Bobby Lashley. They've built him up for the best part of a year as sort of a dominating heel killer kind of person. I think he's literally undefeated since he lost to Drew for the title. I think it was, I can't remember what pay-per-view it was last year. Extreme Rules maybe in the summer, but it's going on to a year that he's undefeated. And as soon as he gets the title, he's now kind of a cowardly heel, and he's looking for people to take out his opponent. It just seems really strange for me and a really weird thing to do. Why would you change his persona so much as soon as he wins the title?
You could argue that he's a little more intimidated because obviously Drew McIntyre was the last person to beat him. But if they wanted that, they should have kind of played up on that rather than what they did, exactly. Where they just like, I would personally would have done it very differently. Even to achieve the same end goal, there's so many better ways they could have done it. That's kind of the problem. It's not necessarily that the end result is bad. In this case, I think it is, but it's just kind of how they achieved that made no story sense.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's just very strange. It's very, very strange. And I feel like I'm sounding like a bit of a broken record at the minute when I say I'm looking forward to the match at Mania, and I have every faith that the match will be fine. It's just the story that's sort of baffling and kind of putting a taint on all of these matches for me.
It's kind of reminding me of what happened with Game of Thrones. Just to go off on a little bit of a tangent, in that the people who are making this kind of the show know where they need to get to at the end, and are just making shit up along the way. It doesn't make any sense story-wise. Like there's other examples from this week, which we'll get to in a moment, but it's like WWE know the match they want, and they know the kind of motivations they want the wrestlers to have at WrestleMania, and they're sat 2 weeks before going, how do we get there in a week? And it just doesn't make interesting television. At least not for me. There's another segment I want to talk about with the same kind of problem this week, which was the Rhea Ripley Asuka stuff. We've now got Nia and Shayna coming back involved for some reason, but when they came out, they were like, "Oh, we've run through the entire women's division. Why do you get a match?" It's like, you lost like 5 minutes ago. Like,
in a 2-minute match to Naomi. Like, what the hell? Like, what are you talking about?
They came out, had a match, went backstage, and then came out again. Like, it didn't make any sense.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's just an absolute joke. And in whose mind have they gone, right, getting Shayna and Nia worked out so well over on SmackDown to get them involved in the women's title picture. I know what we need to do to really spice up the Raw women's division. Let's get them involved as well. Whose mind has said that? It just hurts me. It hurts my head. It hurts my intelligence to think.
Yeah.
The morons that are running this place, man.
I don't know how to put kind of, but I think I could book some of these stories better myself, and some of my booking has been terrible at times. But I genuinely think some of these I could have done a better job. And maybe that's something we'll put to the test at some point.
I just want to go back to someone who is definitely pale enough to be north of the wall, and is my Jon Snow of Raw, my saviour, if you want, Sheamus. He is killing it every single week, and I forgot to mention on last week's podcast how much it made me laugh to see him smash Matt Riddle in the stomach with that stupid fucking scooter and just kick his ass, man. This Matt Riddle, Right, getting over for what I think of Matt Riddle as sort of an actual person in real life. Forget about that completely. This character is so fucking stupid. It is ridiculous. He's just goofy moron, has like no brain cells at all. And to see Sheamus absolutely wipe the floor with him is so cathartic to me, and it makes my soul feel good, and I just pray that he wins the title at Mania.
In response to Riddle's character, I think nobody has put it better than Riddle himself in his backstage segment this week of trying to play up this character to Asuka and then just going, "Oh, I forgot what I was going to say. Never mind," and just walk off.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, exactly.
that one segment was so much better than it, just because you saw the character shift from this kind of aloof. He's not even a stoner character. That's what he was originally, but he's just kind of this aloof character to him just being like, "Oh, actually, like, I don't want to do this," kind of, and go. If anything, they need to lean into that. That's what they need to lean into. But if they've already recorded next week's episode before this one, they can't do that. Why are they pre-recording next week's Raw anyway?
Well, presumably it's so no one gets injured or catches the plague before WrestleMania, is what I'm guessing. I did just want to mention one thing. Did you see when Riddle kicks off his flip-flops? Did you see the graphic that they did this week? I just want to shout out Phil Chambers from What Culture, who is another wrestling podcast, but I like them. Damien doesn't. But he tweeted out a GIF saying, "Is Riddle now so high that we see his visions," or something like that. And that was one of his visions when he kicked off his flip flops, which made me chuckle a lot.
I didn't see the see that. I don't have a problem with What Culture. I just want to throw it out there. Like, you make it sound like I hate them. I just find some of their content a little bit much. Well, let's not start.
After being ignored by Sheamus, Damien is now calling out Simon Miller.
What? Like, let's not try and start something here.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Right. Let's hop over to something else anyway on Raw. And let's talk about the world premiere of Hey Hey Hop Hop. A highlight of Raw for me. I like Hey Hey Hop Hop. And when I say a highlight, it's a very, very low bar to be a highlight. And I think this is what you were alluding to when you said some things were so bad that they were good. And I think this was intentionally meant to be bad, that it was good. But the problem is, for that to work, the rest of the content around the things that are meant to be so bad it's good has to actually be good. Otherwise, they kind of look good.
Yeah, this was very entertaining. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. But I liked the stuff they did last year. Their song about Braun when he was champion was pretty entertaining. Obviously, based on that, we've nicknamed you based on Miz and Morrison's antics. So yeah, this was another entertaining one. They look like they're having so much fun with it, and that rubs off on you when people you're watching look like they're having fun. You can have some fun as well. So yeah, it was a highlight in a low bar episode of Raw. One thing I will mention about the segment, obviously Bad Bunny came out to have a face-off with The Miz, and threw a pretty good-looking punch for. I mean, he almost falls over when he's throwing it, but it does look like it has some good contact in that punch. So, like, I don't know if he did just punch him in the face.
Twatted him on the chin. Yeah, exactly.
But,
exactly.
Yeah.
And
like,
I think it's quite a damning indictment when Bad Bunny, who's been training since probably the Royal Rumble when he first appeared, can throw a better punch than like 80% of the goobers on NXT.
There is some bad punches on WWE TV. Shane McMahon's punches kind of jumped to mind for me, but yeah, that single punch has actually boosted my excitement for that match. That one punch, I'm like, you know what? I'm all for it now. Like, I'm ready.
Has that eradicated all the fears that you had for a singles match involving Bad Bunny? That one punch.
No, but I just want to see what happens now. Like,
Maybe Bad Bunny's finisher is going to be like the Big Show's KO
maybe.
punch.
Or maybe Booker
Maybe.
T's going to come out. We haven't seen anything from Booker T and hit his bookend and what's his other finishing move called? Like the scissor kick one. Does it have?
Probably doesn't it? I can't remember what it was.
Oh, he can hit a bookend,
That's
and
bad.
then we can have a WrestleMania spinneroonie. So
He can spin a Rooney all the way down the ramp on the way to the ring. Imagine doing that. Do you reckon that's possible? Spin a Rooney in
No.
all the way to the ring. Can you dig it, sucker?
well, I don't know how long we've been talking about Monday Night Raw, but one thing I do want to get mentioning before we kind of wrap up Raw talk is the little segment with Alexa Bliss and the Fiend. Sam can see him behind me. I'm quite enjoying the kind of 70s and 80s horror movie vibe I'm getting from this Fiend and Alexa Bliss pairing, especially now that he's on TV again. That kind of monster look he's got is it's a little out of place for WWE. I kind of like having that something different on the show. The
It's
promo was a
definitely
bit
something
weird.
different.
Yeah, the promo was a bit weird, talking about the Fiend in a box and the kind of creepy vibes that Alexa Bliss is giving off.
Oh god. They actually used the phrase fiend in a box. Oh my gosh.
I'm not sure where the character is going to go after this Mania match with Randy Orton.
In the bin, hopefully.
I like the Fiend. I like kind of this whole weird horror tropes that Bray Wyatt's kind of had going. He's had it going for a long time. He keeps built up, and then something knocks him back down. But I'm quite liking it. I don't know how it gels with other wrestlers. Like, could you imagine him having a feud with Keith Lee or something? Like, it could be great, but the feud's not gonna have much to be built on because the Fiend's character work at the minute is pretty much dependent on him going up against someone who's got kind of a history.
Well,
But
I did pick up actually in the chaos that was this segment and the pure comedy that was it panning out and the Fiend being on the swing set, which made me laugh considerably. Alexa Bliss mentioned that I think Fiend is healing or something. He's remerged and he's healing. So what I'm guessing is that they're hinting that over time the Fiend is gonna heal and potentially go back to the form that he was in before. I don't know if that's just going to be sort of in the match with Randy Orton, if they're doing some sort of Firefly Funhouse thing, but I think he's going to go back to the form that he was before. He's not just going to be this barbecue-charred person.
although I do have one thing I've just noticed just from looking at the thing. That mask and bodysuit, not bodysuit, but kind of outfit he's wearing is pretty covering of his entire body, which means that doesn't have to be Bray Wyatt under there. So maybe at Mania we get a moment with like doing a swap, because the Firefly Funhouse kind of stuff in the ring is going to be a lot more difficult. There's going to be a live crowd. But what if they're having a match, Randy Orton hits an RKO, the lights go off, they come back on, and regular Fiend is stood there because it wasn't Bray Wyatt to start with. Like, that's something they could do.
It is something they could do, and I can't decide whether it'd be a good thing or a bad thing, but it's something. It is something. I'm just looking at the still of it now, and it still looks like he's got a stumpy arm, but I can see that his hand is over now. But his arm looks so small. I really thought that they gave him a stump, and I was pissing myself when I was watching it. How is he going to wrestle Randy Orton with one hand? How?
It was one of the most confusing parts about watching Raw is because you sent me the message and I was kind of like looking like, does he only have one arm? Like, I wasn't really paying attention when I first saw it, but no, he definitely has two.
But look at it behind you now. His arm looks so short. It looks really small.
It's all perspective.
How do you do the mandible claw? It'll be the mandible stump. The mandible wrist.
I think that's about time to wrap up Monday Night Raw.
I think we've got the title for the podcast.
The last thing I'll say about it is, despite Raw being a low point in the build this year's WrestleMania, I'm still pretty excited for WrestleMania. So this didn't dampen my spirits for the event next weekend. Yeah,
maybe one more dose of Raw will.
No, I think I'm still pretty excited for the matches.
All the matches on the card are really promising, like we said last week. So there's that beacon of hope at the end of this road, and let's just get through another dose of Monday Night Raw.
Yeah. So obviously next week we'll kind of cover our predictions and forecast, if you'll allow me to use the the pun, for WrestleMania, but it's still looking pretty good for me.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's Raw done for this week. Somehow we've managed to talk about it for over 20 minutes. Let's switch over to what I'm hoping at time of recording is much better than Monday Night Raw this week. Friday Night SmackDown.
Friday Night SmackDown.
So thankfully, SmackDown saved WWE this week from the stench that was Monday Night Raw and gave us a relatively good show with a lot of development of stories leading into WrestleMania. Just what you want to see from SmackDown, and dare I say, what we expect from SmackDown now. I enjoyed the show. What are your overriding thoughts coming off watching it, Damien?
Yeah, I was a little bit worried going into it. Obviously, Raw was a low point this week with just some bad booking decisions, and I was really hoping that we didn't follow that into SmackDown, and thankfully we didn't. I'm not going to say everything was perfect, but in comparison to Monday Night Raw, this was a lot better. It was a lot more enjoyable, and it kind of built on things ready for WrestleMania, and maybe even a few things post-Mania. There might have been some hints, laying some groundwork there, but we'll see over the next coming weeks. But really enjoyed the show. I don't know whether I'm looking forward to next week's show, because there seems to be a weird kind of mini Mania kind of feel to next week's TV. Definitely hyped for WrestleMania itself based on what we saw. And back on the positive.
This week could well be the last proper SmackDown we watch before WrestleMania, as next week is a special WrestleMania edition of SmackDown as WWE are billing it. And I think that leads perfectly into our first talking point of this week's SmackDown, which is the tag team division. We saw a match on SmackDown where the Dirty Dogs, or the Dirty Dogs if you want to say it properly, and the Alpha Academy defeated the Street Profits and the Mysterios, which leads into a multi-man match, I believe, next Friday on SmackDown for the titles. I believe that's been announced now. So Otis and Chad Gable have the momentum going into that, so it's safe to say they won't be winning the titles.
Yeah, it was a shame that this got bumped from the actual WrestleMania card. We've been talking about it for a number of weeks. It was quite obvious this is where they were going. I don't know what that means for kind of the pre-show for WrestleMania. You would have expected it to be on one of those. The other match that was announced was the Andre the Giant Battle Royal, which is also going to be on SmackDown instead of the pre-show. Hopefully it's given a good amount of time and can feel like a pay-per-view match rather than a SmackDown match. But we know WWE doesn't, especially main roster WWE, doesn't go big on tag divisions. Although it's a shame, if it had to be a match that got cut from the main card, at least it wasn't one of the... There's a lot of other high-profile matches. This probably just fell down the pecking order a little bit.
Yeah, there's so much talent involved in all these teams. It is a little bit of a shame that they're not getting their moment back in front of the fans. But I think, like what you just hinted on there, they're going to use SmackDown as a bit of a pre-show type feel for WrestleMania on this occasion. There's a lot of matches already on both of the cards for both nights, so I guess that you just can't cram them all in into those nights. But I'm looking forward to the match. I don't know if it's been announced yet what type of match it's going to be next week. I'm kind of hoping there'll be a ladder match. I love a ladder match, especially a tag team ladder match. So fingers crossed that's what they go for.
Yeah, I feel like it can be a good match. Well, kind of my thoughts for this WrestleMania SmackDown will be that they will have less wrestling on the show because they don't want any of the WrestleMania competitors risking getting injured. So I feel like this and the Andre the Giant Battle Royale are going to kind of dominate some of the actual in-ring segments. So hopefully they do get some good time and can really show. I've liked the build in terms of what we've got. It might not be the build that these competitors deserve, but every single group there has been entertaining in their own way. I'm hoping we get a good payoff for this. It's been a number of weeks they've been building this, so hopefully we can get a good payoff, and hopefully post Mania we can get some good tag matches and stuff, because there's plenty of good teams over on SmackDown. It's just whether they're going to be given the chance.
Yeah, it kind of looks like they've got a little bit of a tag division, which is strange for a WWE main roster show. But let's move over to the women's division. And I say women's division as a whole because WWE don't seem to be able to split up the women's tag division from the women's singles division. They like to intertwine them because apparently it makes sense. So let's go and talk about the Natalya versus Shayna Baszler match. Shayna Baszler gets rolled up again for the umpteenth time in however many weeks, and a brawl. I say a brawl, just random teams of women coming down, attacking each other one after another. I guess leading into a multi-woman match for the tag titles. I don't know if that's been announced. I kind of feel like, if anything, if that's on the WrestleMania card, it's going to annoy me in a way that has bumped the men's one off of the WrestleMania card, because at least the men's one has some sort of, I say story, it has some sort of trajectory leading into WrestleMania. This women's tag division just is so much of a mess. It just seems like sort of spewed out a load of random women, put them in teams, and said, all right, there you go, that's what you're doing for WrestleMania this year.
Yeah, I kind of felt bad in a way for Shayna Baszler suffering another loss, because she should be like a dominant force on either roster. They could book her. They don't even need to necessarily put the title on her. They could give her this kind of character that she doesn't care, but they need to be booking her strong. And hopefully, for me at least, they lose the titles at Mania, and we build to a Nia versus Shayna like splitting up rivalry, and that can push Shayna into kind of that role.
Yeah, 100%. It comes to something when Shayna doesn't even feel like the star in a tag team with Nia Jax. She seems like sort of the wing woman to Nia Jax, and that is not the way it should be.
There's been a lot of hate thrown Nia Jax's way for a number of years because of her in-ring work. A few injuries. Obviously, not going to ignore it. Shayna did obviously injure Asuka the other week, but things do happen. But there has been a lot of hate, and I feel like Nia is never going to get the right response from the crowd because of some of those past instances. Like, wrestling fans are known to hold a grudge, and I feel like when she injured Becky Lynch all that time ago, that was kind of a turning point in her career of where she's going to get the kind of heat of we don't care. Like, people aren't booing her because she's a heel; they're booing her because they don't want to see her. And WWE seem to be like, oh well, it doesn't matter. Like, they're getting a reaction. Obviously, it's at the minute they can have whatever reaction they want, but you only have to look at kind of the screens and look at people's responses to her segments on Twitter and stuff to see how people feel. I don't mind her as a competitor. I just don't like the story that they've had her built in.
Yeah. I feel like Nia Jax has got a place on the card, but if you're pairing her with Shayna Baszler is the star. Nia Jax is the star.
Yeah.
And talking about places on the card, it's just sort of jogged something in my memory. It is a travesty that Bayley does not have a place on the WrestleMania card. She's not even being mentioned for anything. She's not got a match. I know a lot of people touted her to be sort of the host of WrestleMania with Titus O'Neil, but instead they gave that to a dinosaur. So it's mind-boggling that Bayley isn't on that card. I saw a few people during this week saying that maybe she'll sort of randomly appear in this multi-woman tag division to sort of save the day and potentially pair her up with Billie Kay, who also doesn't have anything to do, and she could be a sidekick. But if she isn't on this WrestleMania card, that's unforgivable. She was, for me, the star of 2020 of WWE alongside Sasha Banks for pretty much the majority of last year and carried SmackDown to sort of the heights that it got to last year. And it's just crazy that she's not even being mentioned for any sort of involvement in WrestleMania.
WWE has probably the best women's division in terms of talent that we've seen. I know AEW are doing some great things with their women's division. And WWE have had some great things in the past. At the minute, their women's division is probably the best it's ever been, and just in terms of the actual wrestlers themselves. But the stories
completely agree.
They've dropped so like they're given the time in the ring and the segments. It's not like I know this week is not a great example. That roll up was only like a few minutes into the match, but that. If you look at it independently, that was to set up this kind of brawl story, and we can forgive a short match for that kind of story independently. But the entire story has just not done anything for any of them. It doesn't make Nia and Shayna look good. It's not made any of the people they're facing look good. I guess you could say it's made Reginald look good, like some of his.
Yes, a man in the women's division. It's crazy.
But that's what I don't get the most. It's not that the story is bad because of what's actually being said. It's the fact that once it's all over, who looks good? And you should always have that kind of end goal when you're building that. At the end, someone is getting something out of it. And if a team beat them for the titles, yes, they get the championship, but they're not in a good position in the division for then any building past it. And if Nia and Shayna win, where do they go from there? Like it's stagnated the entire division, this build, and something big needs to change. And
it does. It just annoys me that in the women's division, it seems like if there's ever going to be a rivalry or a feud, it has to be about either a championship or a man. In Reginald's case, I don't think you'd ever see. Well, I can't remember the last time you saw a feud like in the ilk of Seth Rollins against Cesaro in the women's division, where it's almost about who's the better wrestler or who's the better competitor, or they just have a feud that isn't involving those two things. It's just really annoying. And if you do that, that's how you get sort of a Bayley in there. Like I saw people talking about Bayley, and maybe if Charlotte has hopefully recovered from COVID, you have them sort of just having a random match and proving which one's better. You get them both on the card, both really good talents, and they don't have to be in the title picture.
Yeah, it's weird to think that just a random thrown together Bayley versus Charlotte match at Mania could possibly have a better build than matches that have been prepared for weeks.
It's so easy to do though, isn't it? You've got Bayley's talk show segment. You could just have her complaining about not being on the card, and then who comes through her door? Oh, it's Charlotte Flair. There you go, match made. Easy as that, and people buy into it.
We've criticised WWE's pushing of Charlotte Flair in the past, but it is nothing against her as a talent. And her versus Bayley would be a phenomenal match. So I'd love to see that at Mania. Yeah, it's just one of those.
I think we'd be remiss to not mention the actual women's title picture. Yeah. So let's just briefly touch on it because there's not really that much to touch on this week. Bianca Belair and Carmella had a half decent match. I think it more than anything in this match, it sort of proved Carmella's improvement for me
Yeah.
in a way. She looked really good to me. She held her own against Bianca, and if anything, looked like she was leading the match for Bianca, even though Bianca's in the title picture. Belair would end up beating Carmella, which obviously is the right result going into Mania, and then Sasha Banks would attempt to sneak attack her, but Belair sort of saw her coming, and they just had a little standoff, and that was really it. So not a lot to talk to.
There's not.
But at least they haven't damaged the story, so at least that's a positive, I guess.
Yeah, not much really in terms of the build. It was a few moments at the end of the match with the kind of like stare down, but sometimes less is more. Like they didn't need to overbook that, and you kind of get the impression you're meant to cheer for Bianca Belair. Sasha's being the heel in this story.
It's reaffirmed the positions in the story, which is good, and it hasn't damaged it anymore.
Yeah, that's surprisingly that was good booking. Like it got everything.
Yeah.
Carmella didn't look weak either, so if you want to throw Carmella into the rivalry after Mania for another person to feud with, she didn't look weak. She even at one point tied Bianca Belair's hair around the ropes to try and gain an advantage, which was a nice little heel
that was a
maneuver.
pretty cool moment.
And it's so night and day how the booking went for the tag division and how it's gone for the title. Like, as soon as you took that kind of weird feud for the tag titles out of this story, it's actually started to be interesting again. Like you see them that they're kind of wanting to prove that one of them is better than the other with the title on the line. And I'm now actually excited to see this match again. Like we still don't know if it's going to main event night 1 of WrestleMania. It probably should, but it should be a good match. And if Bianca Belair wins, it'll be a good feel-good moment. So
yeah, definitely. I'm just like I said, I mentioned a minute ago. I'm just thankful they haven't messed up this story any more than it was. And if we have another week next week of just this and maybe them coming to blows, but nothing to sort of put a curveball in there, no Reginald, no tag team, any crap like that. Just give me that one calm week and then we can get into WrestleMania. I'll be fine. But let's talk about the main event picture on SmackDown. The show, I believe, started with Edge coming out and explaining, if you want, his actions from last week when he attacked Reigns and Bryan. Long and short of it, he said that the Rated R superstar has been awoken in him, which is pretty cool. It was a pretty intense promo, which you'd expect from this heel Edge character, and his face got very, very red when he was talking. Just some classic Edge overacting. There was a couple of segments throughout the show of sort of Roman and Edge and Bryan. At the end of the show, it was Daniel Bryan against Jey Uso in a street fight. I really enjoyed this match. Before we get to the shenanigans afterwards, I really enjoyed this match. It was a good TV match and some good spots in there. And Bryan looked awesome.
yeah, I think WWE do the kind of street fight match style well, of making it look hard hitting without necessarily going over the top when they do like a weekly show. Obviously, you don't want someone being smashed through the barricade or chucked off of like the stage or something on an episode of SmackDown. You want to kind of save that for the big pay-per-views, but they do well. They hit a few big moves just to add some drama to it with the no DQ stipulation, whatever version of it they do. And this was a good one. Having Edge on commentary and him having a little back and forth with Jey Uso was quite interesting as well. I kept thinking that one of them was going to attack the other during that, which is a normal trope of WWE, of someone in the match to attack
definitely.
person at ringside. But yeah, it was a good match and the right result for me to have Braun win, give him that
Yeah.
that strong booking. You're
I
pretty certain Daniel Bryan's going to win at Mania. I think you called it last week.
Yeah, I'm not changing it. I do think that Brian is going to win, and this isn't the go home episode, and Brian
No.
looks strong, so you never
Yeah.
know. But I just want to go back to Edge on commentary actually, with his little back and forward with Michael Cole. I think at one point Michael Cole said, "Oh, people have been sort of saying that you were feeling bitter about Brian being in the match," and he went, "Well, yeah, I am bitter. What wouldn't you be bitter if someone's sort of trying to edge their way, elbow their way into your match at WrestleMania?" And it sort of gave me, last week I was saying I was a bit down on this Edge character, but it gave me sort of a clearer, fuller picture of what this Edge character is, and he's almost like this jealous heel. Well, not even a heel really. You kind of understand where he comes from. This is his big moment after 10 years of thinking you're never going to be in a main event again, and then there's someone trying to sort of elbow their way in on your moment. Yeah, you would be annoyed. You would 100% be annoyed. So I like that sort of signposting of what Edge actually was.
Yeah, I think some of the best heels you have in WWE is when they have a point that you understand why they're angry or why they're doing so, but you just don't agree with their methods. I think that's the best way to book a heel. Right, you see where they're coming from, but what they're doing is still wrong, and that's
Yeah.
definitely something you can agree with. Edge. You don't want someone coming in and trying to like take your moment. And Edge is just kind of, you know what? If he's gonna do that, I'm just gonna beat him up. Like I'm not gonna accept
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I'm not gonna let him walk over me. So I'm still undecided on who I think is gonna win. But it was good to see Daniel Bryan looking strong this week.
It was definitely, yeah. And just getting to what happened after the match, Brian tapped out Jey Uso in the yes lock, which is 100% the right decision, as we just said. And straight after the match, he'd get out the ring and just twat Edge in the head with his knee, running knee, and just absolutely smash Edge. Didn't let him get in a bit of offense and smashed his head against the ring post and just took him out. Literally took him out. And he turns his attention over to Roman Reigns on the ring, on the ramp up to the Tron, and goes up to there. He ducks some offense from Reigns when he's running at him, and then hits him with a knee and gets him into a yes lock. Doesn't let him get any offense in, and he doesn't quite tap out Reigns, but he gets it in enough, and then officials come out and break it up. And Bryan's standing strong at the end of the show, looking really, really strong. And yeah, it was just awesome.
Yeah, this ending, Bryan taking no shits. Just like I'm gonna take everybody out. It's what he's done it before. He had to do it against Evolution. Now he's
Yeah,
got to do
he
it
did.
against the Spear Brothers.
Spear Brothers.
He did a name for them both. They've been building that a lot in it, that he's done this before, he'll do it again. And yeah, it was a great way to end the show. It kind of built up that kind of impact of everything that you're seeing. Not sure what they're going to do next week for the Go Home SmackDown with them, but
I feel like they might do a contract signing next week.
maybe. I feel like
I think that's WWE thing to do.
this match probably going to be match of the night, I think, of night 2. I'm trying to think what other matches are on night 2. There's a few matches.
You've got on night 2 the Fiend against Randy Orton, I believe.
That match has a lot of potential, but also with that potential, you've got a lot of room for disappointment.
Yeah, it might be the most talked about night of the match.
I feel like,
match of the night, sorry.
I feel like this main event match for the Universal title is probably going to be match of the night because you've got 3 good, talented wrestlers involved, and because it's a triple threat, you don't have the kind of the shackles of like disqualification countouts. You can kind of do whatever. We're assuming that one, if not both, of the Usos will be involved. I feel like there's a chance you could overbook it, but should be a good match. And I feel like realistically, it doesn't matter who wins as long as the match is good. You can get a deserving winner out of any of them. So that's kind of what you want from a match like this. You want it so that realistically anybody could win, just all depends how the actual match plays out. So
Yeah, it's a bona fide headliner, isn't it? It's a proper headliner for WrestleMania. You've got 3 stars in there, 3 proper stars, and I don't think anyone would argue with it headlining the entire show. I did, before we sort of wrap up SmackDown, I did want to just mention the whole Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and Logan Paul actually turning up. It wasn't sort of a ruse by Sami Zayn. He did actually turn up on SmackDown for the debut, the premiere of his conspiracy trailer documentary thing, which I thought was pretty funny. And it is actually getting released. The full documentary is actually getting released on the WWE Network, I read this week. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. I'd love it if they sort of did it as one of these 24 series that they did, but as Sami Zayn actually doing it as a serious thing, which I think they might actually do. So it's going to be entertaining. But Logan Paul came down and obviously got played the premiere. Sami Zayn asked, so what did you think? He's like, oh, well, you certainly put a lot of hard work in there, but whilst I was in the dressing room, Kevin Owens said, you're a bit of a nut job, mate, and you're delusional. So Zayn obviously didn't take very well to that. I was like, Logan, come on, man, I invited you here. And then Zayn ate a stunner from Kevin Owens. And as Kevin Owens was leaving the ring, he gave a push to Logan Paul, which I don't know if it was in the script or whether Kevin Owens just thinks, like probably 99% of the Earth's population, Logan Paul is a bit of a bellend, and gave him a push for everyone. But it was also revealed that Logan Paul is going to be at WrestleMania as a guest of Sami Zayn. So it's all good stuff for me. Logan Paul's not everyone's cup of tea. I don't particularly like him. I don't really know a lot about him other than sort of he thinks he's a boxer and he did some stupid things back in the day. But clearly, a lot of people do like him. He's got a lot of eyes on him, and you can see why WWE are using him. He is a star in some form, and if it gets more eyes on WrestleMania, that's a win for WWE.
I thought it was funny that he kind of looked a little out of place. Not in that he didn't look like he belonged in it, but just like he wasn't sure what was going on. Like just the whole time it was just a bit like, what's happening?
Yeah, what was that?
So yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens at Mania. I hope it doesn't dominate the match too much, because the Sami Zayn Kevin Owens match can be pretty good. But I'm assuming he's going to get involved. He's probably going to hit a move on Sami Zayn or on Kevin Owens, because they did set up that little thing with Kevin Owens, with obviously Kevin pushing him. But I'm going to call it now. That match slash segment is going to end with Logan Paul eating a stunner.
I'd love that. I would absolutely love that. Or maybe, just maybe, Logan Paul's the one getting shot out of a cannon out of the pirate ship. That'd be nice.
Yeah, I think it was 21 million subscribers on YouTube, so
yeah, nearly as many as us.
Any segment with him is going to draw numbers. I don't know if it was always the plan, or if Sami Zayn just kind of called him out jokingly like a couple of weeks ago about it.
If the opportunity's there, you've got to take it, haven't you, from WWE's point of view? But yeah, overall, I enjoyed this episode of SmackDown, and from what we've been reading, this next week's Raw and SmackDown have already been recorded this week, so we'll wait and see what happens on next week's SmackDown. Before we end the podcast, I did just want to mention something that was revealed on Friday night here in the UK. Something really, really cool in the wrestling world, and something that you didn't really expect to see. It's a AEW and WWE crossover. Chris Jericho is going to be appearing on the Stone Cold sessions on the WWE Network, and it took a lot of people by surprise. If you look at Twitter, it took me by surprise. I definitely wasn't expecting to see it, but I'm super excited for it. I love Chris Jericho. I really love Chris Jericho. I've loved him since he was in his early WWE days, when I was watching WWE back then. And if this is even sort of the early stages of there not being so much hostility between AEW and WWE, and them maybe collaborating, not even collaborating, but like I say, just there not being sort of such a firm wall in place between the two companies, then I think it can only be a good thing.
Yeah, I kept seeing a lot of stuff on Twitter about the forbidden door, as like to be said, and how this is kind of the first step to opening it. And I feel like we'll have to wait and see what happens on the podcast and how they deal with the AEW part. Because if you haven't watched any of Stone Cold sessions, they normally kind of do a rundown of people's careers, going from how they started to where they are now. And obviously, Chris Jericho has been in AEW for 18 months now. There's a lot in that you would imagine you'd have to discuss, and it will be interesting to see if they stop before that or if they do discuss it. I don't think this is as big a deal as some people are making out. I don't think we're going to see Kenny Omega turn up on the Monday after WrestleMania to challenge the WWE champion or anything. But if it is kind of the first step into a long journey towards getting some kind of interpromotional stuff going on, like that could be amazing.
Yeah, 100%. And I sort of have an inkling in my mind. It obviously is going to be mainly based about Chris Jericho's days in the WWE, but towards the end of the pod, when they get more up to date, they're obviously going to have to mention AEW in some form. And what you're saying about the sort of interpromotional work in it, to a lesser extent, it's been seen in AEW with them having the working relationship with TNA. Good Brothers are on AEW all the time, and a few AEW stars are on TNA, and they also have a relationship with New Japan, which a lot of people didn't think would happen. WWE is obviously a different beast. It's obviously bigger than anything in the wrestling market in the world. When people hear wrestling, they think WWE. So yeah, it's obviously not going to be an overnight thing where WWE and AEW work together hand in hand. But if there's just not so much hostility and it's sort of not so tribal, it's going to be for the better. If everyone's working together and sort of, I want to say friendly, not friendly, sort of, I don't know what the best word is, but you know what I mean. If they're sort of working towards the same goal, it makes money for more people. I don't think next week we're going to see, like I say, Kenny Omega on the next Stone Cold session or something. But yeah, it's a good step. It's a good step.
And we will discuss any kind of big revelations from that podcast in a future episode. Just before we kind of wrap up, I do just want to kind of discuss so that the listeners can be aware of what kind of the plan is for next week's episode, because it is the WrestleMania edition of the Figure Forecast. As next week is a very full week of wrestling. In fact, WWE has some programming on every single night next week with the Hall of Fame and the 2-night NXT takeover. Our regular review of SmackDown would be very difficult, as we'll be recording it and trying to get everything sorted before the first night of WrestleMania. So instead, we will do a preview of kind of each match and give you our thoughts on the entire story so far. And we'll also have our predictions for both night 1 and night 2 of WrestleMania. And hopefully we'll be able to get that out before WrestleMania begins. And as a special edition, we'll also be competing directly with WWE. And we will see whether me and Sam, independently, can book a better match than WWE can. So we'll both started work on it already, but we'll give you those next week, where we try and see who can write the better story for Randy Orton versus the Fiend.
A fiend off, if you will.
Yeah, and hopefully that will be something that's quite enjoyable. My notebook has got like 3 words in it at the minute, but there's still plenty of time for writing that down.
Is it Fiend versus Randy? Is that what your 3 words are?
No.
Is it goo? Oh no, that's 4 words. I was going to say goo in his mouth.
Spooky bollocks ?
Yeah. But no, next week should be a fun episode of the podcast to obviously record and hopefully listen to as well. So I'm looking forward to it.
In addition to all of the programming WWE is putting out next week, if you really do like watching wrestling and wrestling related content, we have the Fastlane predictions, which should also be being released next week. At the time of recording, we haven't actually sat down to record the predictions, but when you're listening to this, we will have. And hopefully it should be coming out within the next day or two, depending on how editing goes.
Yeah, that will be fun. Things are set to get hot tomorrow when we record our punishment video. We have all the sauces, the spicy things. Why did I have to turn vegan now? I can't even have any milk. Wonderful. I don't know if soya milk has the same effect.
I don't know. I don't know at all.
Fun.
We can put that to the test.
We certainly will. Certainly will. Get the margarine and just have spoonfuls, not margarines, of like some vegetable spread. I'm sure that'll do wonders for my cholesterol.
We'll have to see how that goes. But like I said, keep an eye out on social media for those. I'll give you those now. That's on Twitter, we're Figure4UK, and on Facebook, the Figure Forecast. And we'll be posting kind of information about the punishment video there. We do also need still a punishment for WrestleMania. So once again, if you have any ideas for that, send us a message on one of those platforms or message us directly, and hopefully we can come up with a good punishment for the biggest show of the year.
Yes, so we need a suitable punishment that doesn't involve any shaved heads or eyebrows. Please.
Definitely not eyebrows. We've both got to go to work that week. You for the
We
first
do.
time.
First time in 5 months, and I think it wouldn't go down well if I didn't turn up with any eyebrows.
Any suggestions you have, we'll look forward to hearing from them. If not, we're going to have to struggle to come up with another one for ourselves. But I'm sure you guys can think of some horrible things for us to have to do.
Yes, yeah, definitely. But yeah, we look forward to it. Thanks for listening this week, as always, and we'll see you next week.